These days, an extra dollar is certainly hard to come by. So when you do have some to spare, how do you prioritize your cash in the way that's best for your future? Should you save or should you invest? Well, here with a 7-step plan of action is Manisha Thakor, co-author of Get Financially Naked. Welcome, Manisha. Great to see you again.
Great to see you, Tanya.
So let's start with your first step. You say make the minimum required debt payments on all of your outstanding debt. Now, I'm assuming this is just to keep your credit score clean, right?
It is, and I highlight it because when having a conversation about competing demands for money, sometimes spending it is a counterintuitive first step. But the reason you do it is because it can save you money down the road. A lot of people don't realize this. A bad credit score hurts not just your ability to get an affordable mortgage or car loan, but it could also keep you from getting your dream job or renting the apartment that you like.
So that's step number one. If you've got the cash to spare, pay down your debt. Then secondly, you say that you should save $2,000 as a starter emergency fund. Why is this so important?
Tanya, so this is fascinating. The Consumer Federation of America has done a study, and particularly for those of us in our 20s and 30s, with amazing consistency, we have an average of $2,000 a year of unexpected expenses. And anecdotally, I can tell you less than 50% of people have that amount of cash tucked away right now.
So what would you recommend to somebody who still has credit card debt but doesn't have the $2,000 in an emergency fund? What would you do? Would you put a little bit towards both?
Right, so it's a proverbial chicken and the egg question.
Yeah.
I personally think you want to first save the $2,000. My experience is it's like dieting or exercise. You've just got to get out there and start doing some of it.
Right.
Start that $2,000 and then move on, and we'll talk about that in other steps.
Okay, great. Now, step number 3, that, I know you said make the minimum required debt payments in step 1, but should people consider having a starter emergency fund even if they have the outstanding debt?
I really think so, and I'll tell you why. It's training. It helps get your financial muscles in shape. I really think that if you don't have at least $2,000, the one thing you can expect in life is the unexpected. Something will go wrong. You're just going to add it back on your credit card. So separate those two problems. Start the habit of savings, then we'll deal with paying down that debt.
So be prepared. All right. Then also you say contribute to your employer-sponsored retirement savings plan up to the maximum point of your employer's match. This is something we hear on this show time and time again. Please explain once again why this is so important.
Sure. This is huge for 2 reasons. Number one, it's free money. It's a guaranteed return. And the reason I'm highlighting it is because it sounds like very obvious financial advice, but I'm meeting so many people, Tanya, that are just scared to death of the equity markets right now and the fixed income markets, given what's happened over the last 2 years. So just reminding people to write thank you notes, have a good smile, and contribute to that 401k up to the point of the match. Good, simple life advice.
Absolutely. I'm just wondering, though, Manisha, do you find younger workers aren't as eager to save up for retirement? Is short term more of a concern than 30 or 40 years down the line?
It really is. I mean, our society has bombarded the 20, 30, and early 40-something set with nonstop messages to enjoy today at the expense of tomorrow. It'll all work out. And that's a lot of cultural programming that you've got to kind of squeeze out of your head. And so I am really seeing this trend. That's why I emphasize these basic but important steps over and over.
All right. Now, we're going to talk about another kind of emergency fund, or at least a larger one. You say that we need to build up that emergency fund to 3 to 6 months of your absolutely essential living expenses. That includes everything: rent, food, car payments, everything, correct? Is this an extension of the starter emergency fund we talked about in step 2, or is this something separate?
No, you're absolutely right, Tanya. It's the extension, and this gets into the excellent question you asked earlier. How do you think about this dilemma? Do I save money or pay down credit card debt? In this particular environment, I advise people to start saving for that 3 to 6 month emergency fund before starting to pay down the credit card debt in earnest beyond the minimum payment. And the reason why is it is so hard to get access to credit these days. So, 5 years ago, I would have said the reverse. I would have said pay the credit cards off first, then build the emergency fund. At the end of the day, there's not a right or wrong answer. I'm advocating it because we're having a liquidity crunch still.
Right. And in this 3 to 6 month pad, being able to pay all your expenses, I mean, is that assuming that you might lose your job, which is something that everyone has to be prepared for these days?
It really is. Or even if you're not losing your job, you could be furloughed, you could be asked to work 4/5 time. And people will often say, do I do 3 or do I do 6? If you're in a 2-income secure household, you can aim for 3. If you're in a single household with 1 income, or one of you is in financial services or some of these other areas where layoffs have been prevalent, you want to aim towards 6.
All right, great advice. Now, 5th step to prioritizing your cash is if you have any credit card debt, pay more than your monthly minimum payment. All right, so this is if you have cash left after the minimum payments, after the $2,000 emergency fund, after the 401k, and the 3 to 6 month emergency fund. So this is if you're in really good shape.
Yeah, after all of that, if you're lucky enough to be swimming in cash, what do? If your credit card debt is $5,000 or less, pay an extra $50 a month every month above the minimum monthly payment. If your credit card debt is between $5,000 and $10,000, add an extra $100 a month. And if it's above $10,000, add an extra $150 a month. Depending on your interest rate, if you do that, you'll have that debt paid down in 3 to 5 years. And if you need extra help, my favorite book on this subject is Jean Chatzky's wonderful book, Pay It Down.
All right. And now, quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, but if you're ready to buy a home, it's time to save for a down payment, you say. Now, you also want to keep saving for your retirement, right? So
for most people, it's a trade-off. Most of us don't have a lot of extra money, so I'd like to highlight, if you want to have a home, you may have to make the mental trade-off that you're going to have to work a little longer, because money you save for the down payment is money that won't be going into your 401k. So I'd just like to highlight that. Don't think that you have to buy a home right out of the gate. A lot of people got pressured into that the last couple years to detrimental effect.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot on the show about sometimes it makes more sense to rent. Now we're going to turn to viewer questions sent in by you, the viewers, about debt and cash management. Manisha, the first question comes from Rachel via Twitter. She writes in saying, I'm just graduating from college and have never had a credit card because my parents told me not to. I prefer to pay for things with cash. Is there any reason for me to get a credit card? What would you say to Rachel?
Well, first of all, Rachel, you're very lucky. You have wonderful parents that kept you out of the credit card trap while you were in college. But now that you're out in the real world, believe it or not, I actually do suggest that you get a credit card. I like to emphasize, credit cards aren't bad. It's credit card debt that is bad. So you want to get a card, charge something on it every month or two, pay it off at the end of the month, on time, in full. It could be toothpaste. It doesn't have to be something large if you feel uncomfortable. But the point is that will help build your credit history. So when you're ready to buy a home or a car, you've got a demonstrated track record of showing financial responsibility.
And what's ideal? Just 1 credit card or 2 credit cards more? How many should a person have?
So I'm a minimalist. My personal belief is nobody should ever have more than 3 credit cards. 1 is a primary. 2, if you absolutely want to have a backup, say your primary is an American Express or a Discover card and you want to have a MasterCard or a Visa as a backup. And then the only reason to have a 3rd card would be if you have business expenses that you want to keep separate for ease of accounting purposes.
Right. Makes total sense. All right. Our second question of the day comes from Gavin. He sends us his question via Facebook. How does the opt-out feature of the new Credit Card Act work? Can you keep your existing interest rate forever? A lot of confusion over the new Credit Card Act, a lot of changes going on to people's credit cards. You get letters from them and a lot of fine print. So maybe you can help Gavin make some sense of this one.
Sure. Well, Gavin is not alone. Looking at it, it made my head spin. The Credit Card Act is taking effect in 2 different pieces. The first piece happened in August, and this is the part that Gavin's talking about. Had 3 components. We now get 45 days notice before rate hikes. We have to get our bills 21 days in advance. And we have to have the option to opt out of a rate increase. Unfortunately, that does not mean that you get to keep using your card at the old lower interest rate. What it means is you have the right to say, no, thank you, I don't want to pay 22% interest. I'm going to continue. I'm not going to charge anything further, and I'm going to pay off my existing debt at a lower rate. In a way, it's a gift. It's kind of a kick in the tushy to start paying that debt off.
Do you still get to pay it off every month, though? It's the same schedule.
Yeah, you can continue to pay it off at the existing rate, but you don't want to add on any new charges. That's the kicker that people are getting confused about.
All right, makes sense. All right,